Greetings, everyone. Nathan Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. And with me, I have a gamer nerd. And I heard you do some gaming. This is Sir Lucien, by the way. And you do a variety of things, I heard.
Yeah, definitely a lot of different types of gaming. Board gaming, tabletop gaming, computer gaming, just about any type of gaming. I'll live play gaming if you want. I'll play chess in a park or something somewhere. So definitely variety streamer, variety on YouTube, all that kinds of stuff. Just the whole gambit of gaming.
Oh, man, chess in a park. It's been a while.
There you go.
Yes. Hi, Brian Smith. Yes, the Nerdarch mage himself. I'm filling in for everybody that would have normally done the live stream chat. And we are basically just talking some nerdy stuff. We've got you are a Renaissance gamer, from what I understand. And I want you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, like what kind of scheduling you have, because I know you do streaming, so.
Yeah. Currently, I do a couple of different actual plays that I stream. Some are on break during the summer, some get ramped up. I've been doing a Storm King's Thunder campaign for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I do a lot of one-shots with a lot of other content creators that are out there, whether they're streamers or YouTubers or just friends or people I just met. I invited a delivery guy to one of our games because he recognized a shirt I was wearing that had a 20-sided dice on it. So like if you're somebody out there that's wanting to play a game, I'm always looking for more players to just dump into these games and play them and just give everybody that opportunity. And so we'll stream on Monday nights. A lot of times we'll stream our games starting at about 8:30 Eastern. I'm an East Coast kind of person, even though we bring lots of people in. And then we have a Thursday game that I'm not streaming, but is a Westmarch's game. And I talk a lot about it on our Saturday morning show, which I do a Saturday morning D&D show with Jordan, the PH is Silent, my co-host, really great guy. He does the Forgotten Realms Explained videos out on YouTube, super popular and great. He's on a bunch of the stuff too. And we just talk about like what we do, what kind of games we played, some things we learned as DMs and GMs and that kind of thing. And then on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, I do the Standard Array, which is another show with my co-host PB Plays Inside. And me and her, we talk about all the other RPGs that are not Dungeons & Dragons. Because although we love Dungeons & Dragons, there's a lot of other great games out there that need just as much attention or just as much discussion or people talking about or playing as Dungeons & Dragons. So we love them all. And so those are the ones that are going currently. One-shots just happened. You can check me out on Twitter if you want to see when the next one-shot is. In fact, we're playing one on Thursday, which is tonight. We're going to play a one-shot. We're going to do Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing first edition or second edition. I forget which one. We're going to roll up random characters tonight online using Roll20, and we're going to play a quick little fun adventure as a one-shot just to get some people in just to play. So that's a fun thing. Everything goes to YouTube after we stream. So if you're checking out the stream or you miss it, because I know how hard it is for people to say, I want to watch for 4 hours or on Monday night, but then I've got something else going on. We put it all up on YouTube so that you can check it out at your leisure. And we're always hoping that people come by the channel. We're always hoping that people send in questions. We're always hoping that people contact us to come play in our games. We have a lot of people that come and just play in our games that are just random people from out there. So we like playing with all kinds of people. So
now that is a jammed pack week.
Yes.
So you said some times. Is that I'm Eastern Standard Time.
East Coast, yeah.
Okay, East Coast. All right. So
yep. Those are all East Coast. We start after about the 8:30ish time slot during work week, because I still have a regular job during the work week, and then on the weekends we do some things at different times, whether it's noon, but a lot of times we wait till noon because like my co-host Jordan, he's on Mountain Central Time, and then so we also will sometimes play with people that are from England or London, so then we'll try to play those weekend games at an earlier time slot so that those guys and ladies can come and play, and they're not up at like 4 a.m. trying to match our schedule. So
it makes a lot of sense. I've had some people play from across the pond, and it's like, oh yeah, it's getting late outside. I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah.
Basically, like stay up all night to play D&D, or wake up really early in the morning to kind of like sync times together.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of activity in chat, so I'm going to have to dive into that in a little bit. I'm not ignoring you guys and gals. I just multitasking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've always been curious. So you play Westmarches.
Yes.
You said Thursday, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay. So as far as Westmarches, I've never played. I'm interested in playing, but it's just one of those things. It's one extra thing. So I guess sell me the sizzle. I know this isn't a Westmarch stream, but sell me the sizzle on why I should play Westmarches, and it'll make it easier for me to allot time to it.
Yeah. So my game currently is what I call a pre-Westmarches, because I feel like I was what you're talking about maybe about 4 months ago. And I heard about Westmarches, didn't know what it was about, and read up on it and thought maybe I should try this as an alternative to the type of campaign that you might normally run, like saying buying a Wizards of the Coast campaign or maybe creating a whole world yourself. What was this Westmarches thing that I was hearing about? And here was what kind of sold me on it. The idea was that it takes some of the onus off of the GM to schedule the games to run. Okay, so a true Westmarches is I'm going to build a world. It's typically going to be a hex crawl map. I'm going to build that world. It's going to have its own interactions, and then I'm going to wait for the players to form parties, tell me when they can get together, and if that meets with my schedule, I'm going to run a game. So it could be running it for different players. It could be running it for the same team if they can organize themselves. It's this really neat way to say, how do you build a campaign where there's a lot more use of drop in, drop out, where you're planning the sessions to say they want to go a few hexes out, they're going to go out, meet whatever is going to happen, they come back, and then the next session, if it's a totally different group or they got to move people in and out, the game should allow for that, right? So a Westmarches is kind of combines those things of allowing a drop in, drop out game. Whereas if you play, like I'm also running a Storm King's Thunder, it's hard to say if I've got a team of 5 and then I want to bring somebody in for just one session. It's harder to work that into the fiction, or it's harder to work that into the schedule versus like what a Westmarches is. I think the other thing that a lot of people like about a Westmarches game is it's a sandbox game. So a lot of times people want to play something that isn't necessarily have a storyline that, I don't want to say railroad, because you have lots of choices when you're running through a storyline, but it does have a theme, and you have a bad guy or a thing that you're trying to get accomplished, and that's kind of the campaign where you're driving. A Westmarches is, hey, there's this world out here. It doesn't know about you. You don't know about it, and you're just going to bump into things as it happens. So as you go out there, you find something, you come back, and I found it to be a way to play sandbox-style game while it's still being a tabletop RPG. So take the onus off of scheduling the players, although we schedule on Thursday, so it just kind of plays out that same way. In my pre-Westmarches was the idea that I wanted a team of good players to build the town, because it always has a starting town. You're always on a borderland of some sort of unknown lands. And there's never any adventure in the town. There's never any intrigue. There's never anything going on there. That's the safe space. That's where you come back to restock, refuel, tell your stories, and then everything's about going out, finding what's happening, and coming back. So it's that kind of style of game.
Okay. So it's like random adventure encounters out in the wilderness with a like home base.
That, and there are set piece things that you put out there as a GM. So like I'll give you on mine, I have a town that is on a whole new continent. So my players have never been to that continent, still in Faerun, just so they could keep the Faerun Pantheon and all that stuff. So brand new camp. Then I have this hex map, and they just, all they had was their one hex in the camp, and they could see it. And they just said, well, we're going to go north. So they go north and they hit some mountains. And in the mountains, they find an orc tribe. Now that was something I put there, but then along the way, they had a random encounter. So there is the random encounter tables that you make for traveling, but there's also set piece things that you have going on in your land that you create. And the other thing I think that Westmarches does really well, or that you can as a GM if you want, is you can have factions in the world vying against itself, whether the players are interacting with it or not. So as an example, I have in the middle of my map a bad guy who is an evil druid, who has created an evil spider kind of kingdom to win the forest back from the other races that were there. So that's right in the middle, and they can bump into that. There's an orc group to the north that is fighting against them. They're at war. So my group is just off venturing around, and they come across a orc war band that's going from one place to another. They don't know why or what's going on. And then they just ran into the spider kingdom, and they're having a big fight with those things now. And so there are these pieces that they can bump into, and the world can kind of evolve around, even if they don't do anything. So even if they went south and never went to those directions, I still in my head during the kind of what I think of as like a faction turn is deciding how the war is going between this evil druid and his spider minions and this orc tribe that's trying to carve some more territory out of the mountain areas. So, and that's all happening. So in some ways for a GM, it can be fun because you have this like little mini game that's going on while you're still prepping for the players. And it's not as much prep because the players will say, well, we're going to go to the south. And then I already have the map set up. It's already keyed. I already know what things are there. That stuff's already set up. Maybe a random encounter roll, and we just play it out. So there's not a ton of prep for that that you have to worry about. So it's kind of a nice, fun game to run so far.
Okay. It would make me think that since they could go anywhere, I just thought maybe that should be more prep. But it sounds like based on how it's crafted.
Yeah. You key your map. That's the whole thing. That's the work in the beginning. Your hex map, you build it, you place the things that you want there, and that's your prep in the beginning. And then from there, it just kind of runs itself.
Got it. Now you have a Saturday show as well.
We do a Saturday morning D&D show. That's the name of it with Jordan, and that one's more of me and Jordan are both GMs. And he comes more from the idea of all his games are at the table. So his friends come and then they play at the table, or he goes and plays Adventure League in the game store, or he gathers people to play the games. And I'm all about the online. So I bring a lot of the Roll20 stuff, or I played with Fantasy Grounds, and I brought people from all over the country, all over the world. I've had people that are from Australia and UK in my games. So we brought all that together, and I come from that angle of it, the online version of it. And there are two different styles of playing game, though they can be very similar, but they also can have very different challenges to them. Very different things can happen in them, or considerations that you might think of as a GM. And so we built that show. I contacted Jordan and said, let's do a show that really shows both at the same time. And then if there's other new GMs out there thinking about doing it, they are going to hear our weekly, here's what we've been doing. So here's what I prepped for Storm King's Thunder. Here's what I did with my pre-Westmarches game and some rules that we created. He talks about here's what happened in some Adventure League stuff. Here's what happened in his home campaign. And so we're always just using our experiences to show people, hey, it's not rocket science. Anybody can be a GM or a DM. We always need more GMs and DMs. Everybody should make that leap. Like I was a player, I played from 1980s, like 85, 8-year-old kid. A friend brought his and his older brother brought over red box D&D, and it was just like, let's play some Dungeons and Dragons. And I'd never even heard of it, didn't know what it was, and was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever, right? And then that person over the summer, he's only at the house for 2 days, one of those visiting things where friends come over for a couple of days in the summer and then they're gone
and then
again.
Disappear.
And then I was like, well, now what? So now I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't have any other friends that even knew about it or heard about it or whatever.
The first one was free. What am I supposed to do now?
Yeah. So I turned to like read do it your own adventure books. Remember that was like a huge popular thing back then, where you could, if you want to make this choice, turn to page 42, but if you want to make this choice, turn to page 52. And that was as close as I could get to Dungeons and Dragons, because none of my friends even had heard about it or knew about it. And then in high school, I found some more people that were playing it in my freshman year, so we play at lunch in the library, hidden away from everybody, because we were always super embarrassed, and people would tease us a little bit because we're the kind of the nerdy kids that were playing in the library. And then played in some real campaigns throughout the end of high school is where I really got it. But then bounced around a lot after that with the type of gaming. I'm going to bring this story back in a second, I promise. And it comes back, and I play throughout. I was in the Navy, went out, did that, came back, then have a regular job, find some friends. We get together for a regular campaign that happens on a certain night. And I play, but that fizzles out like all gaming groups seem to do. Like people can't keep the schedules the same. People have kids. It's hard to gather everybody together. And I just kind of let it go. And I kind of moved towards computer gaming, because that was never, hey, we can't play because Joe's, has a birthday party he's got to go to, so we're not going to play tonight. Computer gaming was always there, right? You could always I'm just turning my computer on, I'm going to play. But the catalyst for this, and we'll come back around, the catalyst for everything was Will Wheaton doing the Geek and Sundry tabletop show. He started playing a really fun game of board games, all types of games, card game, board game. They even did like Dragon Age, the role-playing game, and then he did Titan's Grave. And that, when I watched that, I thought, oh, well, wait a minute. I need to get back into role-playing games. And this is about 2.5 years ago. I need to get back into role-playing games. And that was when I said, I'm going to dive back in. But as a player, I couldn't find groups. I couldn't find a GM. I couldn't find a DM. So another 6 months would go by. I'd watch these shows. I found out people are putting them on Twitch. So I start going and watch Hit Me JP. I start going and watch all these people that are putting on, the games on, because that's the only fix I can get of gaming. And then finally I'm watching Adam Coble, who's the person I credit the most with kind of inspiring me, and Matt Colville talking about, don't just be the player that complains about not finding a game to play in. If you can't find a game after like a day or a week, then be the GM and make a game. You gather the people together. And I was like, I'm going to do it.
And they're saying a day or a week. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And I'm just like, make the jump though is the key, right? Make the plunge. And when I did it, I thought, I am so stupid that I've waited this long to be a GM in one of these games. I had no idea how much fun it was. I had no idea how creative it could be. I had no idea how many millions of ideas in my mind were rolling around in there like, oh, I should do an adventure about this. I should do an adventure about this. Because I was always looking at it from the player. I was always waiting for a GM or a DM to create something for me. I wasn't the one ready to do it. And now, these last 2 years, I play game after game. I probably play 2 or 3. I play in a game on Tuesday night. I run a game on Monday and Thursdays. I run one-shots on the weekends. I go to Gen Con and volunteer at the booth to run games. So I run games for Monty Cook Games. I go in for Magpie Games. I run Powered by the Apocalypse games. I also run Numenera and Cypher and the Strange games. I play D&D, Dungeon, all of it. Pathfinder, the whole thing. I've done it all now. And it's just because I made that jump to say, I'm not just going to wait around to find that perfect group that can meet every week and is going to be together for 5 or 6 or 10 years. I'm going to make the games, and I'm going to find people and bring them to the game if I can. So that's kind of a long-winded way to get around to that, but was the idea that I wanted to be a GM, and I want to encourage other people not to wait so long like I did, because there's so much fun you could be having if you make the plunge. And I know it feels intimidating. I know you might think it always seems like there's a lot of work and there's a lot of prep and all this other stuff, but you can do these games and play these games without a lot of that, or you can mitigate a lot of that by a lot of the great advice that's out there online that can help you out with that. That's what I want to do now, is I want to encourage people to run games, be GMs, be DMs.
Yeah, from your personal experience of getting not so much burned, but just missed opportunity from all that time that you could have been playing.
Yep.
Yeah, I bet it was quite a kick in the pants when it was, oh, a day or a week you can't find a group, go be a GM, and you're like, wait, I've been waiting like years.
Yeah,
I guess I'm far behind on that.
Yeah. Why would I wait? Yeah, that was well, and I didn't know that. Like, here's another thing that was a realization for me, is that the creativity that comes with it. If you go out in this space right now and you start looking online, or you start going to your game stores and you start trying to find people that are doing this, a lot of times what you find, like if you go on Twitter, if you go on Instagram, you find a lot of artists, a lot of people putting their stuff up that's doing this. And I see people drawing art or creating music, or they're very creative people. And I would never put myself into that, right? I'm a computer nerd, or I'm just a gaming geek or whatever. I'm not really creative. I'm not drawing things. I'm not painting things. I'm not a singer, any of those things. So I wouldn't have thought I was creative. It wasn't until I became a GM that I realized, wait a minute, I have just as much creativity as any one of them, but my skill happened to be in trying to tell a story, or trying to use words to explain that you're in a dark forest, you're hearing sounds all around you, something jumps out, what do you do? Let's roll initiative and let's play. That's where my creativity was. And now it can come out. I can be a creative person. I can be very creative, even though I'm not an artist of some sort, but I am in a way, right? And that was an epiphany for me, because I will watch a TV show and think that could be a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. I'll listen to a song and think, oh, that reminds me, that would be a cool plot line for something. I'll be walking down the street and see, oh, that building would be really cool if we did like a zombie kind of apocalypse kind of modern age thing where the players have to do this. Like, my brain has constantly been doing that this whole time. And if I'd been GMing this whole time, I'd have been creating 20, 30 years of awesome stories for players to play in. And I waited too long. I just was a player. I was waiting for that to happen for me when I could be doing it myself.
Well, you've been building up all the experiences and backlogging it until now. Yeah, it's just like sometimes I'll see a building and I'll be like, oh man, That'd be an awesome building to climb. That should be a skill challenge in a game.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where our creativity can come out sometimes. So if you're out there and you think, I'm not a creative person, I couldn't possibly do those things, you can't. You just have to find what you're creative in. It could be that. It could be maybe you're a dancer, maybe you're a painter, maybe you're a singer, maybe you're a story writer, a novelist. But in this, maybe you happen to be a dungeon master and you didn't know it, or a game master and you didn't even know it. You know, and bringing people together to craft a story is a team effort, right? It's not just you doing it. You're not entertaining them. We're entertaining each other, right? It's a team effort. There is no just one person doing it. So I think that encourage people to try it. Just get out there and do it and try it. You can do low prep games. You can do no prep games. I'm doing tonight 0 prep. We're going to play a game tonight. They're going to build characters, and while they're building characters, I'm going to listen to what they're talking about and joking about, and I'm going to think of an adventure that these characters can go on based off of what they're talking about. I have no prep at all. Nothing.
Improv DMing based off of the players' inspiration or their own creative desires. Yeah, that's a fun way to play. That's one of my favorite parts about Session Zero. I'm a big planner type person.
Yeah,
I have to go off the cuff so much because of how much leeway I give my players and the player characters, that I have to plan enough that I feel comfortable with saying, yeah, you can go left. I'll just make something up. We don't have to go on that 7 hours of adventuring I had planned.
That I created. Yeah. That I just did.
Yeah, it's like, but why don't you want to go get the mithril that's right on the other side of this buried wall?
Yeah, that I just set up.
Like,
and don't get me wrong, like we're
going home.
GMs, we as GMs you can set up. If you like to plan out a really cool storyline that has lots of cool things to it, you can do that. You can find players that are willing to do that. You can find players that like that style. You can also find players that like the sandbox game, the ones that just like random stuff happening. You can find the players that are super into character backstory and everything's about tying their backstory in somehow, like their long lost brother shows back up and that's what they're into. So it can be every range of I want to prep a full campaign guide all the way to I'm not going to prep at all and I'm going to hit the button and I'm going to stream it and we're just going to go live. Just sitting at the table, never met any of you. Let's go. Like a convention game. If I'm playing Mass, the New Generation, Powered by the Apocalypse superhero game, superhero teenagers game at a convention, we're going to sit down. I've never met any of you. You're going to start making characters. We're going to tie those characters together with little itty bitty things. I'm going to ask some questions like, oh, really? You did that? But what was the name of that villain you did that with? Oh, that was their name? Cool. What were their powers? Oh, okay, I got it. And then all of a sudden we have an adventure based off of just some of the answers. So you have everything from full on prep. You could do months of prep all the way to no prep at all and everything in between. Like it's all there for you. Every type of possibility of a GM that you could be is possible.
Yeah, I find I do a lot of prep so that when my players are like, we want to go this particular direction, they can go it. And I don't feel like I've just lost my mind. I'm like, no. Yeah, but I'm probably the preppist person, the person who preps the most. I'm the prepper out of the Nerdarchy crew. Yeah. And I swear by it as a thing that you should do.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do it to make a fun time. I mean, because you can have an overarching story plot that's supposed to go on for 12 months, but there's going to be a time where you have to try and cram players that are squares into round holes, and it might not work.
Yeah.
And no one, I mean, is that the player's fault? Is that the GM's fault? I'd rather not think about if it's one of your guys' faults. I would just say like, well, how can we still make the game fun? Mm-hmm. And because I'm not writing a novel, I'm trying to have fun with my friends. It's not a job. I'm trying to have fun with my friends. So in the end, that I hold that in high regard than sticking to a storyline. And I found my players, every single time I GM for more than 2 sessions, the story arc that I'm having come about has been added to or manipulated by my players because they make cooler little ins and outs, like coming in and out of the storyline. And I'm like, oh, this would be a good side quest to go on that they completely invent it based on their thought process of what is going on in the world. And I'm like, yeah, let's hop on that, because because they've got the cool feeling of being right about something, even though they're not. You just never tell them. And you get the cool experience of adding something to your world that didn't exist before the players started talking about it. So overall, I find that kind of cooperative storytelling a lot more rewarding than trying to cram a story down the players personality-wise, as well as just overall just less stressful for me, because I don't keep trying to, okay, how am I supposed to drag them back to this one arc?
Well, I don't think you're ever done creating either. I mean, you have your prep to start with, but you still are creating as you're reacting to what's happening, because really what we're trying to do is build a world that reacts to the players, whether you're good at improving that, or it's because you have so much really good prep that you've built your base off of, that now when they decide to go to this village, they come to the fork in the road, left or right, it doesn't matter which one. I'm not agonizing, oh, they got to go right because that's all I have prepared. If I have a really good prepared world, it doesn't matter. If I'm really good at improvising, it doesn't matter. So really, in the end, it's the end result that we're trying to do, is to give them a living world that reacts to them and their actions. And however you do it, and all versions of it, there's no right way, and there's not really a wrong way. There's just a bunch of right ways, right? There's a bunch of ways that could be harder, could be easier, depending on what type of player or style you are GM wise.
Yeah, what's your GMing style? What are you comfortable with? And keeping that flow, whatever you need to do to keep the game moving at a good pace, whatever you and your players decide is a good pace. I mean, if I've sat for half hour and looked up rules before. That's not a good pace. I know that's not a good pace. So if I'm sitting there for 10, 15 minutes and I didn't say, hey guys, let's take a pizza break or something, or let's just take a break in general, I've got to think about what you just did and work it back in. Otherwise, if I can't go on a fly, I'll be like, hey, just give me a minute. And I find that better to kind of collect myself and like, well, how is what they just did linking together with everything I just have? Like I sent an assassin against some of my group. The assassin it wasn't there to kill them for a particular reason that they understood, because it was introducing a plot element to them that they didn't know existed yet. Do you know what I mean? So they didn't know what they had, and this assassin thought that they did know, and that they were helping the person the assassin is trying to stop. So it just happened to be that the person had assassin skills. It's not like, I'm a hired killer. They're just excelled at slaying people, rather than like the generic, like, oh, I get paid to kill people for money. So I used that a template, and I used that person, and I also introduced a few new like homebrewed stuff with that character, and thankfully they ended up sparing her life. Otherwise they would have found out I would have had to like leave clues on her for them to figure out things. But overall, like that kind of introduction, if based on how they decide to handle that, thankfully they captured it at the end of the session. I was like, yes, now I can go off and think about it all week. I'm like, prep your questions for this, because that'll just help me out, so I don't have to try role playing a character, trying to figure out what she's going to tell them, what she's not going to tell them. They're putting her under truth serum, so I've got to work around that too and tell the truth while not like giving up all my secrets. So there's a lot of things that blend in together like that. And, you know, having experience like that and talking about it on one of your shows, that's the kind of thing I think adds to the community's understanding of different things they can do. And I think that's a good service to do for the community, as well as just probably fun just hanging out and talking with your friends.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what Nerdarchy is as well. We're just like, for the first couple of years, we were just chit-chatting on camera.
Right. Well, there's a lot, you can find a lot of help out there, right? So if you're brand new, you're sitting in chat right now and you're thinking, I've been thinking about being a GM, but you know, I want to learn a little bit more about it before I jump into it. And you can go find videos everywhere that offer it. But what I've noticed is, if it's a video coming from somebody who's GM for a long time, they typically will lean towards, hey, just improvise. Don't worry about having lots of prep. And I think it's because they've done it for so long.
They don't remember how scary it is.
Is pretty easy for them. But I'm coming at it from 2 years ago. I made the jump to say, I'm going to be a GM. Not only did I make that jump, I said, I'm going to also put it on Twitch live. I'm going to use Roll20, which I'd never used before in my life, a virtual tabletop.
Those are some learning curves there.
Yeah, I'm going to run a game I've never played before, Numenera, or I've never GM'd before. I've never GM'd anything before. And the idea is you don't have to put that much pressure on yourself, but I understand the anxieties that those people might be having at the moment, because when you go online, it's all about, don't worry about it. It's prep isn't too bad. And people use the word prep, but never actually explain what prep is half the time. They just talk about, well, you'll have about an hour and a half of prep and your game will run pretty well. But
it's like a nap. You just do it.
Yeah.
What is prep?
What is it exactly? Prep's different for different people. Prep could be getting a list of NPC names, setting up your storyline, getting a description of the areas they're going to be in. Prep could be drawing maps. Prep could be getting the templates for the Twitch stream ready to go. Prep, there's all kinds of different things, and you'll have different varying levels depending on game systems and what you're trying to do. And what I've tried to challenge myself with is trying to do lots of different styles. That's why the Storm King's Thunder is this is how I think Wizards of the Coast expects a dungeon master to run a game. They buy a module, they run it by the numbers the way it is in the module. I do add a few things here or there, but no homebrew rules, no nothing. We play it as is to get that experience so that I have it. And funny enough, a module is a lot of prep because you got to read through that whole thing and you got to know a lot about what's going on, and you feel like you got to know all this stuff. You got to know all the rules. You feel this pressure of, I got to know every rule, and I got to know every character class, and I got to know every ability they're going to do, and I got to know every spell. And here's what I found out. You don't need to know all that stuff. What you do need to do is have your group understand that we're all going to be the rules lawyers. We're all going to be the people that understand. You need to know your character, because I'm going to lean on you to say, how does that ability work? And we might go look it up if we're not sure, but you get some of the responsibility too, not just the GM or the DM, right? Because I've got plenty that I need to do with the NPCs and the world and the storyline and all the other stuff that's going on. And so when you discussing prep can be a little weird. So our show is definitely about demystifying running games in a way that it's real actionable things that are happening. I talk about what happened on Monday night. I talked about what happened on Thursday night and what lesson I learned. Like, it's not like I'm telling you how to do it. I'm telling you I learned a lesson, right? This is something I didn't know about. Like Monday night's game for the last 3 or 4 sessions, I'll give you an example. It's been a running theme for the show. I wanted to, because there's been this big discussion in the D&D community about how many encounters per day is expected to go, a group to go through. Right? Because it feels like people are getting one encounter, a long rest happens, they're all powered back up, they're all full hit pointed out, and they're back into whatever the next encounter is. And it feels like, I think people are running into this idea that characters seem really tough to kill, or characters seem overpowered. And then somebody will bring up the reference in the DMG that says, well, wait a minute, a group will typically go through 2, 3, or 4 different encounters before a long rest. And then, like, a lot of us are sitting back going, wait a minute, that's not happening in my game.
Yeah, that's why combats last so long. That's why, because you're not depleting resources over time.
Right. So this is what I did. I said, I challenged myself. I want to know what the difference is. And I want to have a way to come at this conversation the right way. So I've been running it normally, and most of my people, they will have a big fight, they'll get their long rest, and we'll move on with the story. This last 3 or 4 weeks, they went into the kind of the spider cave den. They've been in there, and I've purposely, every time they've tried to rest, I've interrupted them. Every single time. Good. I've allowed them, in 4 encounters, they've gotten 1 short rest, but that's it. And they have felt more tension, more fear that their characters are about to die than they ever have before. Like, it was like they were down to the wire and they were fighting amongst each other about, should we stay or should we go? They're doing, threat assessment analysis about what's going on, and real character emotions are coming out even from the players themselves, because they're feeling the tension of, I don't have any more spells, guys, and you want to keep pushing forward. That's the conversation that comes up at the table. And I'm sitting back going, ooh, look at this. This is so much fun, And it's not that every game has to be that way, but I want to be able to know that that's what it looks like when it does go that way. And this is what it looks like when they're full power, they're ramped up, and they're ready to go. So for me, that discussion goes, hey, maybe we should be having our players have more encounters before long rests. But then I had some talks with my players, and I got a view from them. And the one thing that stood out to me is that they said, well, I'm playing this character, and if you've set these little encounters up to take away, or to use up my economy, right? My action economy, my abilities, so that by the time I get to the big bad guy, I don't have any of those signature abilities. That's when I need those signature abilities. That's when the character really needs those things. So am I doing them a disservice by taking that, whittling it away, fight after fight, before they get to the boss when they really need that big fireball or when they really need that big spell slot to bring somebody back up? So I had to rethink about it. I'm like, okay, what's right or wrong? And I still don't know the answer yet. So what's cool about that is it's happened in my Thursday night games. We talk about it on Saturday. We have a good discussion with another person, Jordan, another GM, who says, this is what I think, or, oh yeah, that's intriguing what you're saying. And I'm looking at it from all angles, player angle, my angle, and you can see it real time. So I think that's what we like about the show. Not that the advice that's out there, I mean, Nerdarchy has a ton of great advice videos out there for people to watch. They've been watching them for years.
Well, thank you.
Matt Colville has tons of great advice videos. Adam Colwell, great advice videos. You can find all kinds of people with 10 viewers and people with 1 million viewers. You can find advice anywhere out there that you want. The one thing that we were trying to do that was a little different is we were trying to be relevant to the games we're playing immediately right now, and then coming at it from two angles of, we sit around a table and how does that change? We play it online. How does that change? And here's the things that we're experimenting with as we go. And here's what we've learned. So that's what we're trying to do. That's a little different, but it's still the same things. We're just trying to give advice to GMs and DMs that are out there. It's a lot of talking.
Yeah. Excuse me. I haven't used my voice lately. Yeah, I'm watching chat as well. So yeah. I like the idea of having a few more encounters to challenge the players because, well, okay, so from a gaming experience, I have a high-level game that I'm playing in, and the GM always likes to have, like, a rough fight. We usually don't have easy fights. And at 17th, 18th level, the level of fight you have to have, you pretty much either barely survive it, it's like you stomp it, you barely survive it, or you're like, I'm gonna die, run away. Because it's so much stuff, the variability of the dice, what happens, how experienced the actual characters are, like if you don't meta it, like what the characters are actually dealing with and how they're getting through it, it can be pretty crazy. And you can't, between all the different kind of like combinations of character classes and personalities and gameplay styles, you really just have to feel out what kind of players do you have, what kind of player characters are they playing, and how does that all kind of churn out to be a fun session? Like I played in Horde of the Dragon Queen, and one of the things that I noticed was I was always fearful that I was going to die because I was like, I'm just playing a rogue. I got nothing except the sneak attack and my ability to hide, and that's all I had. And one of the things I noticed was that I was slogging through all these encounters, and I was like losing hit points, and sometimes I'd just be like, I'm out, guys. Good luck with the rest of this. I'm going to shoot a crossbow from the background. Because it was just such a prolific quantity of enemies coming at us over a long period of time that it just had to be, like, well, how are we going to deal with this? What are we going to do? And that is, I find that exciting because it makes it feel more real. Like, we're all tapped for spells. All we have is Spare the Dying. Like, that's our healing, is Spare the Dying. That is not a good healing spell. We're in trouble. And that, really makes it, life or death for the characters in that situation. And so, like, walking that line or having kind of, like, wobble back and forth on that, I think that's a cool place to be. But there is,
you got to know your group, right?
Because exactly.
Your group there's going to be that group that loves that, but there's also that group that wants to come in like a superhero movie, be full power, have their full abilities, and have a big fight, but they want all their tools available to them during that big fight, so that the fight feels like, all right, they're super tough, but I had everything available, so it was on me to figure out how to use those in the right combinations. So it's just finding the right style for the right group that you have likes that. Like my Westmarches group, I'll give you an example that leads into that. This is more of a realistic game. We track rations in that game. The Storm King's Thunder game, I never asked them, how many rations do you have in your pack? That's just like, we're not getting down to that level. But in the Westmarches game, I have them track water, I have them track rations. And here's another rule that we created for the Westmarches game. When they leave town, because there's no iron rations, all rations can go bad. When they eat their ration, they roll a D20. they have to roll higher than the number of days they've been traveling, and the ration is good. If they roll under the number, they happen to pull that ration out and it's been spoiled. So they'll get 2 days out, they'll pick a ration out, somebody will roll a 2 and they're like, oh no, that ration's not good. I have to pick another one up. So there's
Just
like this,
kill it with fire and still eat it.
But I have players that would hate that, right? I have players that, why are we tracking rations or number of arrows I have in my quiver? But there's a certain group of people that want that extra economy to it, or the actual realness to it. And they like that style. So you kind of configure your style to play that way. And then the other group is more like, it's an action movie. It's a cinematic movie. Let's don't worry about how many rations you have. Let's don't worry about travel. It takes 3 days to get to the next thing. Let's just montage through that. We don't need to roll random encounters and go through that. Let's just go through it. So you just got to kind of play to what your group likes to do, and then everybody has a good time. And it's a group effort, really, because it's not just the GM that has to do it, right? It's the players are there to have a good time, but they're also there to make sure everybody's having a good time, just like you're there to make sure everybody's having a good time. It's on all of us to do that.
Agreed. I was listening. I was just also reading chat.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm bad at the multitasking thing. Some people are pros. Like, you stream long enough, and I'm sure you've got it down by now. Reading chat and hanging out with the people there, as well as the people. Yeah, trying is the best we can do. So I like the spoiling rations thing, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't want to say it's unrealistic, because I've prepared food for Journey and stuff like that before, and like make my own beef jerky and stuff, and like it's sometimes bad, but I feel like you know that before you put it in your pack. But I guess if it's all wrapped up, ready to go, like, here's this bundle that was prepared.
Through jungle, you're slogging through the woods, you just don't know.
That meat just had a little too much fat on it, or your pack got wet and that one was on the bottom, so that one goes bad. So yeah, I like that, and it's up to you and the player to kind of explain away. Well, why is it bad? Yeah. It's like, I got, and then some people, if it happens to them a couple times, they'll be like, we got ripped off when we bought our rations.
That's what happened. They were on day 4 or 5, and our cleric was doing his ration, and he rolled 5 times in a row under 5. So he had 5 rations in a row spoil, and everybody's laughing and having a good time. And like a really good sport, he then created a storyline where he had said that the cook that had set everything aside for all these guys, he had a beef with them, so that the cook, this must be the cook getting back at him for this argument they had
That's great.
Earlier. And so it kind of worked into the story, because they were like, oh my God. And the reason I put it in there, here's the thing. I didn't just put it in because let's make it real or realistic. I needed something that forced them back to town. Like in a Westmarch's game, what you don't want is them just staying out in the wilderness. What you want is them going out and coming back. That's what makes it run. So I had to sit back and say, how do I make them come back? I need them resupplying. I need that to be a real thing. So that's where we came up with the water, and I wouldn't let them. In fact, I got an agreement from the players that we weren't going to use Goodberry, so nobody took that spell, because they knew what I was doing, and they were like, "Oh, I'm going to build this druid who has all these backgrounds that can do all this stuff." I'm saying, you can do that, but I want to have this game where it's going to be a little tougher, and it's going to be a little bit more extreme than that. I would like it if you didn't do that. Yeah, and they were all on board.
Just don't play the characters that would be excelling in that region. Yeah. That makes sense.
Another one we did. Another reason. If you roll a 1 while you're attacking with your weapon, not only does it just fails, because there's no critical failure in 5e at this point. But what I do is I say, your weapon has been damaged in some way, and you now have a -1 to damage when you roll a 1. So we had a couple of players that he's got this big old greatsword. He's rolled 1 a couple of times, and all of a sudden his greatsword's not working as well, and he starts panicking. He's like, we got to get out of here. We got to leave. And back at camp, back at town, the blacksmith can fix your weapon. So it can go right back up to normal. They can resharpen it, or you can think of a million ways that something's going wrong. But it's another pressure to say, all our gear is deteriorating. We need to go back to town. so we need to go back. And it didn't affect magic items. So if they had a magic weapon, we didn't do that, but it was like some crossbows or bows. The string wasn't as powerful anymore because it got stretched out, or because of the water that they were slogging through, or, the great sword pommel screw at the bottom of it that holds it in, that started to come loose, or there's nicks in the blade. So it's not doing as much damage, or it's not powering through as much, or whatever they wanted to come up with. Why? It didn't matter. If they rolled a 1, their weapon did -1 damage each time they rolled a 1. So I let that build up. So it was all these things to make them want to come back to town, to fix weapons, fix gear, get new rations, get new stuff, and then go back out, to really promote the idea of going out and coming back, going out and coming back. So
I like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
they loved it.
If you have magic items, you kind of have a easy out from that.
Yeah.
But I like, overall, I kind of like the deterioration. I'm looking to do a homebrew Dark Sun soon, and like I have to get players that like the idea of tracking their water and other things like that, because that's part of the game. Part of the game is surviving in a place that's killing you.
Yeah.
That's dying itself, and you just want to live as long as possible on it. So there's a lot of things in there that if you gloss over them, it feels less like Dark Sun and more just like Forgotten Realms of the Desert.
Yeah.
And it's not Forgotten Realms of the Desert. So playing it like a normal, hey, let's just have some fun and play. Here's some encounters, yada, yada, yada. It's like without, trying to count all your ceramic bits to try and like get something. Or when you find a metal weapon, like how amazing that is. Like, and you're like, metal weapons is what people start with in regular D&D.
Check out Tomb of Annihilation did a really good job about creating some new rules that has to do with going through the jungle and weather affecting how hot it is, which then affects how much water you have to consume, and what happens if you don't have the water that you need to consume, exhaustion levels coming in, and different things that are happening to you. They did a good job of introducing environmental variables that I think you could then grab and bring over to your Dark Sun game, because for a 5e game for sure, unless you're going to play like a 3rd edition or a 2nd edition.
I'm going to do 5e.
5e, yeah. And I love 5e, and I'm not building rules because I don't like it. I love the game, but I'll sometimes tweak something if I want to get a certain feel in the campaign to happen. Let's do this one thing just to see how it works. Like all my one-shots are experiments in what would happen if we did this thing. What happens if none of the characters know each other when they come together in an adventure? What's that look like? Because I want to GM that. What's it look like if they all have a powerful magic item to start with, even though they're low-level characters? Give them a big, powerful item, play a one-shot to see how that just affects the whole game and how that skews the whole power curve of what's going on. Go in and play around with the different... In this campaign, I'm only going to use CR ratings that are normal or dangerous or deadly, and play through them just to see what does that really look like and how to recognize it. Because 5e can be pretty swingy, and 5e's dice can be... You could set up a perfect encounter that works out mathematically, and then the dice rules mess everything up. Like if they're not hitting and you are, it's over. It is over for those guys. So it's really cool. What's interesting to me too is that 5e is great, but there's a lot of other games out there that are really good. Numenera's system is fantastic. The Cypher system is really good. Powered by the Apocalypse games are really fun and have great mechanics. Don't tie yourself down to one at this point anymore. There's so many good games out. So many Kickstarters are coming out right now with great games. I'm hitting the button for all of them. Like I'm back at everything at this point. I'm like, I love it all. And there's so much good stuff out there, but 5e is really good right now, which is I'm really on board with it. I'm really happy with the games I'm playing it, and it's been really fun playing them.
Yeah, so I like the idea of playing different games. My friend, I just recently went down to South Carolina to hang out with my friend Matt, and we talk about him on the show sometimes. But I also went to Myrtle Beach, and one of the things I did when I hung out with Matt is heard how passionately he loved with this of Dreams and Magic, which was a Kickstarter game that came out recently. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I'm interested in it. It seems pretty cool, and I'm reading up on it right now, so I'm trying to find somebody who actually knows what it is and be like, hey, do you know more about it than me? Because I haven't even finished reading the rule book.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard about that one. Yeah. But there are a lot of, like, I just got backed. Overlight was one that I just backed. I know Pathfinder 2 is coming out this summer. Numenera Discovery and Destiny's coming out this summer. I beta tested and alpha tested Star Trek Adventures for the Modifius developer, and they have a lot of their D20 style games. There's just so much out there that's so fun to play. And sometimes they're based off systems you recognize, and sometimes they're based off other systems that you've never even seen. 2d6, story type dice, no dice at all. I mean, there's everything in between. There's dice pools, there's D20s, there's percentage dice games. I mean, everything's out there. Everything in the whole gambit is out there and ready to play. And that's the cool thing, that you can find people online these days to get into your game. So, like, if you can't find people to play at your table, which can be intimidating or hard to invite a bunch of people to come to your table and play, which was what I was having trouble with, then you can turn to online, because the online community, you can find good players out there that are willing to play in a style that you like. You can find, like Roll20 has been great. I've been to that community and found several players that fit right in with my normal friends, and now I've been playing for the last 2 years in the Storm King's Thunder campaign, and it's been great. And I didn't know them from Adam at that point, when I just put out a post that said, hey, I need another player seat to play Storm King's Thunder 5th edition starting at first level, and picked up some random people, and it turned out great. And it's not that that'll always happen, but there's definitely a big pool of people out there that you can kind of go out there, run a one shot, get used to playing with those people, and then move on. Like, I'm going to play with Dave the Human. He was really good. He plays with Adam Cobol's group quite a bit. And he said, hey, I'm looking to play in another game. And I sent him a message and said, hey, I'll run a game. I've got some players. And then he was like, oh, when I said that, it sounded really good, but now I'm a little worried, because I'm like, he doesn't really know. He has social anxiety. He's a little leery of the bad side of the internet out there. And all of a sudden, somebody out of the blue just contacts you and said, hey, let's play a game. You don't know what you're getting into. Yes. Yeah, you don't know what you're getting into. It could be like crazy. So a one shot can be a great way to say, well, let's try a one shot out. You can see if you fit in, if you like the GM style.
That way you don't have to commit.
Style. And you don't have to, there's no commit whatsoever to say, hey, I have to stick with this. You don't have to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And so that's available.
At worst, you lose 4 or 5 hours. At best, you find a really cool group.
Yeah, that you play with for years.
Yeah, I had opened up my playing online with people I did a pay to play games, and I'm like, I could get some really bad players, and I'm kind of like at a loss, but I ended up getting some really great people, and I'm like, I play in another game with them, and it's it's really been a lot of fun, and I was like, I feel like I really lucked out. I won an internet lottery.
I did too, and I was surprised, because I thought, oh, there probably could be a lot of bad players out there, but it's worked out every single time. I've been able to find good players that fit in, and I think it's because you set expectations early. Mm-hmm. You say, this is the type of game I'm going to play or run. Would you like to play in it? It's kind of clear, right? You just don't say, hey, if you want to play a game, just show up and have no idea what's going on. I play a very heroic game. I play a game that's doesn't get too deep into socio-political problems. I don't get into, we don't do any PvP, right? We don't, I want to run a game where the group is working together, not necessarily trying to hide things from each other. Or
your heroic adventurer is not.
Yeah. It's okay if you want to play that. You're not a bad person if that's the style of game you want to play. It's just, for me as a GM, I want to play the heroic style. I want to. This is a team. You're a group of people that are trying to do something. You come together for a reason, and let's have some grand adventure to do that. And then let's play that.
Right. If you
finding those people. Yeah.
If you don't mind, we're going to take a few questions. I've missed questions throughout the thing.
No problem.
Chat's been pretty busy. So we've got Brian Smith. Question: do you do anything to world build or prep with characters in between sessions?
Yes, definitely. And it depends on which campaign, because and how many people you have. This is what I've learned over the last 2 years. I run a Storm King's Thunder that has 6 players. Very hard to work in backstory from the players when you have 6 of them and you're trying to shine the spotlight on all of these different players. way easier when I had a group that was only 3 and a group that was only 4. I was much easier able to work in backstory into the regular campaign to really make them feel at ease, or have something cool come back up out of their history. So you can do it, but just be aware that the size of the party you're running can affect how well you can do that, and then the type of campaign if it works out. The Westmarch's campaign, because they're in a land that they don't know of, a lot of their past doesn't come back up very much. Storm King's Thunder, they're in a world where they're all from anyways, and they're trying to save the world from all the rampaging giants. Lots of their stuff can come back in and pop up. Lost boyfriends or girlfriends, wives or husbands, enemies or rivals, or any of those kinds of things. And you can really prep some great backstory for them for that.
All right, Mark Bird, question: what are your thoughts on City of Mist? I've noticed the beginner RPG players can be confused with how loose the rules are.
Yeah, City of Mist is awesome. If you look at the book, artwork draws you in. You want to play this game. It's a modern game. It felt like a Dresden's File kind of game to me. It felt like an Urban Shadows kind of game if you played that RPG. But it is a looser, powered by the apocalypse style kind of game that's not as regimented as, say, like a Dungeons and Dragons game. And so it's a shift for some players to understand, well, wait a minute, there's not as many boundaries or rules that I have to know, because it's a little bit more wide open. It's a little bit more of a storytelling system. From a GM standpoint, I haven't GM'd it yet, but I bought it, I have it, and I want to run a game in it. So I can't really say here's how what I would do for GMing it yet, but I will, because I'm going to play it, and then I'll put it out there how I would do it. Any game that is loose rules, and a Powered by Apocalypse game can be a very loose type rule set. Focus on the story more than the mechanics. Just focus on story, focus on making cool moments for the characters, focus on surprising them or doing something that seems really cool and makes the hair raise up on their arms. Focus on that when it's rules light type RPG games, because that's the type of game they want you to have.
Otherwise they wouldn't be playing a rules light game. Right.
They'd be playing a war game and moving armies across the battle when they want like rule intensive games.
Yeah. So Roger Babin, as far as searching for Westmarch's information online, he wants to know if there's easy to find tools to build towns and play in the game in general, or is it like a book you buy?
Yeah, when you start searching there's a lot of people that put together resources for Westmarch Styles game. The one that I can recommend the most is from Stephen Lumpkin on Twitter. If you go to his handle and you look him up, Stephen Lumpkin, in his Twitter feed, you can type in Westmarches, and he has a bunch of posts of all the resources he used when he built his Westmarches game about 2 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. You can also find it being played on the Roleplay Twitch channel, JP's channel, and they show the actual play of that so that you can see how it works, how the factions work and all that. And that's how I built mine, was using some of what they talked about and then turning it into what I'm doing with a few of the things, make it D&D 5e version of it, basically. But there are a lot of tools out there that can help you. And
also, since you do them as well, you can find him at on Twitch and YouTube. Your previous games, right, will be there.
Yep.
And tonight you're playing a Westmarches, right?
No, normally we would have, but we switched it. We played on Monday because one of our players couldn't be here.
That's right.
Tonight. So tonight we're going to do a one-off of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. But normally you do Westmarches on Thursday. All right. I was I thought I remember this correctly. Okay, great. So you can find him at Sir Lucien, and that is on Twitch as well as YouTube.
Yeah. All you do is twitch.tv/Sir Lucien, one word, Lucien. Same with YouTube. YouTube.com/Sir Lucien, one word, and you'll find all my stuff.
Yeah, I put it in the chat for those of you who want to know the spelling and also the configuration. No spaces.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to plug or put forth, or any new projects you're working on?
No. In fact, I wanted to come on and just talk about GM and stuff. I didn't even care too much about plugging, although it's cool that I'm doing shows and people can come by and check them out, and I encourage you to do it. But I just love that not only is Nerdarchy, I do it too, where we reach out to other people, bring them on our shows, let them give their experiences of how the gaming's going, and so that way somebody out there is going to say, that's my same experience. They're going to connect and be like, that's exactly how it worked for me, or that's exactly what happened to me. And it's just going to make them feel better and more comfortable about continuing, keeping it going. Even if something happens, you know, they're just like, we're all out here, we're all having fun and sharing that. And I love the idea that we share that. So I was really glad that you guys were able to have me on, and I say thank you very much just to be able to share my experiences in the hobby. Because it's such a great hobby right now. It's like this renaissance of tabletop RPGs. The community's fantastic, and I love it so much.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you on and listening to your story and how you got to where you are now. And I think it's really great that you're out there playing games as well as helping people understand how they can do the same thing.
Thanks a lot. I've enjoyed the time.
Yeah. So with that, let us know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to check out Sir Lucien on Twitter, on Twitch TV.tv, and YouTube as well. And with that, until next time, stay nerdy.
Bye, guys.